So great turnout. I wish my kids thought I was this interesting. They don't, by the way. So thanks very much to the Series Play for having me. I really appreciate it. It's fun to come and speak to everybody about this stuff. I'll start by giving you a little bit of context of who I am and why I'm here on talking to you guys today. When I was a kid, my dad was a pretty thrifty guy. So we heated our house mostly by wood stove. I know, it's a bit crazy. So we spent our weekends out in a woodlot where we got our wood. He would rent it from the municipal government for $25 for the season, and we go down, chop down trees or saw down trees and cut them into logs, which we'd bring home. And then my fall chores were to split those logs for firewood for the winter. As you can imagine, I'd rather be out in the schoolyard playing ball hockey with my friends, but my job was to split the wood. So I was less than enthusiastic about it. But what I did was, I would get out there with the axe and then I would count how many swings it took me to split a log. So if I split a log in one swing, I'd take those two pieces and chuck them in that pile. If I split it in two swings, I'd put them in that pile, 3 swings, and so on and so forth. So then when I went to stack the wood, I'd count each log, and logs that were from the 1 swing pile, I got 10 points. Logs from the 2 swing piles, I got 5 points. 3 swings with 3 points, and those pesky logs that took me more than 3 or 4 swings were just 1 point. And my goal was to see how many points could I accumulate in a 1-hour chopping session. I never grew to love wood chopping quite as much as I like ball hockey, of course, but those sessions were actually pretty fun, and they went by really quickly, and it's because I was able to turn it into a game. And so that's kind of the beginning of my gamification chops, as it were. I made games out of everything. Like in school, I wasn't very fond of school, so I'd balance on the back of 2 legs in my chair, and I'd watch the clock and see how long I could balance for. Get through the odd boring science class or whatever. I didn't know that that would actually become my vocation. It was kind of what I did. So we'll fast forward to 1998. And much like today, except in this case I was actually training. I had a job as a corporate trainer. I was on a mobile unit that moved around North America, training companies how to use their new SAP software. It was a horrendous job. And the reason it was horrendous was I was often training middle and senior management. One summer I was actually here in Montreal at Rolls-Royce. And my job was to train senior management on the new implementation, so I get in front of a class full of people, all of whom have nothing but utter contempt for me. And largely because in those days, middle management, senior management, most of them didn't even use computers. They had systems that did that stuff. So they had no idea why they were there. So sitting in a room like this, looking at some punk like me, who's going to teach them how to use this resource planning software that they don't care about and don't understand, it was awful. They hated it, I hated it, and nobody was having fun. More importantly, nobody was learning. And so one day I was planning the next day's lesson, dreading it, and I thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to make this a game. So I decided I'm going to divide everybody into 4 groups, and I'm going to give them a machine, and I'm going to say, you guys figure out how to do this system task, and you guys figure out the same thing. First one to get it done wins. So, and wins nothing, by the way, just wins. So, what happened? These people start going into SAP and they're trying to figure out how to log a piece of inventory, pretty dreadful stuff. But they're collaborating and they're talking amongst one another, and they're kind of, you can feel the pressure ramping up as they see one person's getting screens past them. And they actually had fun. And at the end of it, the grumpiest, most cantankerous woman of all of the lessons who had always been, just hated me. She hated everything. She came up to me and she said, that was really fun, and I actually learned something. I thought to myself, oh, that's really interesting. So, as luck would have it, later that night, I came downtown to my apartment in Montreal, and I was surfing the internet because it was free agent season. I was trying to see if the Montreal Canadiens had signed anybody. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Habs fan. Nice to admit that in Montreal. And I was on TSN's website, and this is a mock-up of it, but there was a banner ad for Esso. And I was like, oh, I wonder what. So I clicked on it, and it took me to their boring corporate website. And I thought to myself, that's just crazy. I wonder how many people. As luck would have it, I checked my email later that evening, and I got an email from Marketing Magazine, and the article was about how banner ad click-through rates were sinking through the floor. And I thought, well, no kidding. Who wants to leave their entertainment content to leave an ad? It makes absolutely no sense. It's like running an ad on Channel 6 on TV that says, turn to Channel 50 to watch our 24-hour infomercial. I wouldn't click on that, I certainly wouldn't, or we would change the channel. So I got to thinking about that television methodology. So they take 22 minutes of content to manufacture an audience, and then they ingest 8 minutes of advertising to manufacture a business model. I was like, that's it. That's what we can do online. So I started a business back in '99, and what we did was we built flash games into which we nested our clients' videos. Now, I knew this wasn't really a great model. It was '99, so it was novel. Nobody was doing it. But I knew the model wasn't that great. I mean, how many times have you been watching TV in the old days when we used to have to sit through commercials? The commercial break would come. There'd be like 3 or 4 commercials. At the end of it, you'd realize you didn't see anything. You had no idea what those commercials were about. It's because you turned your mind off because you weren't interested. And it's a really passive medium. You're sitting back, you're eating popcorn or whatever you're doing. You didn't pay attention. So I realized that this sort of in-game advertising model was okay, but it wasn't great. And I wondered about how we might be able to create an experience that was a little more immersive. And it was actually a client who got us there. Procter & Gamble, we started working with them in 2001. They commissioned us to build games for their NFL sponsorship. So we built these 2 little NFL casual games that ran their videos in between. And then they said to us, could you put it on a microsite? Yeah, I guess we could. And could you include a contest? Yeah, I guess we could do that. Figure out how to do it. And we started talking about what their goals were, and they said, well, we want people to come back because we really want people to be aware of the Old Spice brand and how we're repositioning it. And then we want people to opt into our email newsletter. So we thought, why wouldn't we just give them extra chances to win every day they come back, and an extra chance every time when they opt in. So we did that, and we launched the first sort of gamified digital promotion, I think, in the history of the world. Anyway, it did really well. So well that we ended up working with them for a number of years, got other clients, all that stuff. And clients kept pushing us, because it's one thing to incentivize people to come back every day, and it's another thing to incentivize them to opt into their email. But on the marketing side of our business, what people really want is to educate customers to increase consideration and buy stuff, right? So we started trying to weave the value propositions of our clients' products right into the game. And that's where you start to deviate from gamification. We'll get into that in a second. So these games that we were building were designed to educate people. And then in 2005, we did one for the Tylenol brand to promote the new rapid release pill. And the sales manager played it, and she called me, and she said, this is amazing. This is exactly the stuff we need our sales reps to learn so that they can sell these pills at the pharmacy level. Could we take this game and make it an e-learning game? I guess we could. So we had to make some changes to it. We did it, and it turned out to be the top training program they'd ever run. We were sort of surprised as they were. We got written up in a couple of training nights, and we did our utmost to ignore that business. And despite our worst marketing efforts and utter neglect, we kept getting other clients. We're like, I think we're onto something here. So eventually we built a training platform, a software as a service, designed to educate folks. So that's how I ended up here. Sorry for the long rant. First of all, I want to talk about gamification. So this is Merriam-Webster's definition. The process of adding game-like elements to something such as a task to encourage participation. I think it's a pretty fair definition. This is game-based. It's an adverb, and you couldn't find it anywhere, so this is from the John Findlay Dictionary, first edition. And it's morphing an experience into a game to make it more engaging. And that's a really important distinction. So today what I want to do is just show you a couple marketing programs that are kind of gamified, show ones that are game-based, show a couple training experiences that are gamified, and show ones that are game-based, explain why they're different, how they're different, why they drive better results. Should take about 25 minutes or so, 30 minutes. So let's start with marketing. So often our customer marketers call a contest a game. I don't really call it a game, but that's what people call it. So here's an example of one, where you have a chance to win $10,000 and all you got to do is register. So it's great. I fill out a form, I hit submit, I'm done. I get a chance to win 10 grand. So the question I always ask people is, what's the one thing you notice about this? And I would contend that most of you are looking at that. Very few of you are looking at that and that. Moreover, even if you did look at them, what the heck are they and what do they do and who cares? Right? So, honestly, that's how we think as consumers, right? So, I sign up for this. I don't learn anything about the brands. It doesn't increase my consideration, doesn't make me want to buy them. And on average, I spend less than a minute doing this about the time it takes to fill out an online form, and off I go. So then I think about what are the objectives of cabinets to go and talent floors? Well, they're probably to educate people and give consideration and make people come and buy. That didn't do that. But one thing they did accomplish was spend a bunch of money on a company to build that and give away 10 grand. Probably not what their bosses wanted as an objective, but there it is. So that is kind of like a super simple game. Now we'll look at a game-based promotion and how it ties the company objectives, the brand objectives, right into the experience. The experience is the game. So this is Cracker Barrel. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with them. They have two lines. They're sort of a store and a restaurant all in one. One of them in the south. They're all along highways. So their big thing is to try to get people engaged leading up to the summer road trip season. If you get the top of mind, so when people fall off the highway, they pick them instead of Harveys or Fuddruckers or whatever's there. So their goal was to educate people about their new products, new menu items, all that kind of stuff, calories in their food, and all that kind of business. They also want to encourage social sharing and social reach because they want as many people to give out this as possible leading into road trip season. And they want to build their own proprietary audience so they don't have to buy media from people all the time. They can send emails and post stuff on the Facebook page or whatever. So here's the program they're in. So the entire experience is the game. So where I showed you the contest page, instead of that, you got this. So you come in, you register, and you're playing this game. It looks a lot like Monopoly. You got this little card, and you're on board. And your goal is to land on properties and collect their associated icons. And when you collect all those properties, you'd be entered into a contest to win a trip to Washington. So if you collect them all, you've got a chance to win all the prizes. So the experience is the game. You're playing, it's tied to road trips. All these icons are actually old Americana stuff, which is what Cracker Barrel sells. So there's a whole bunch of sort of subliminal kind of things happening to you in the play. But more importantly, we'll look at how they tie to their objectives. So those spins of that frying pan of the wheel didn't come for free. You could get them for opting in, for joining their social networks, for sharing on social networks, and for learning a little bit about Cracker Barrel. We'll dig in a little bit on that. So the learning things were sort of a daily quiz that you could take, and it were just questions about their menu items or about their products and so on and so forth. And there was always a find answer button that took you to the spot on the website where you could find the answer to that question. So nobody would ever do that just in the context where you slapped it on your website. But in the context of a game where it ensures that you can continue to progress, you're much more willing to do these things because you're driven more by your progress in the game than you are necessarily learning about Cracker Barrel. You kind of learn despite yourself almost. This little thing was like a little pop-up that came up, and it was just an instant win thing that showed Cracker Barrel products. And the reason that's there is it's a tactic we call around the office surprise and delight. It's got a little bit of a history. And when we first started building the games, we built hockey games for the NHL, and one of them was a game where you just took shots on a goalie. And on a whim, we just programmed in that if you hit him in a sensitive area, he would fall in a heap and leave you an open net to shoot at for 3 seconds. But only if you hit that one spot. Somebody hit that one spot, and then they thought it was amazing. They posted on a social network. And then a whole bunch of people said, how could you hit that spot? Where did you have to do put the meter exactly to do it? And it created a little buzz, and this game got tons of traffic. We realized there's something to just discovering something that was unanticipated. So we call it surprise and delight. So we tried to nest it into things. It's a great tactic. If you can find ways to put it into the programs that you're trying to use to motivate people, it's really effective. It gets people talking, and it also makes them curious to stay engaged and keep coming back to see if there's any other little nuggets thing they might find. Right? So that's a tactic that I highly recommend using. So then there's the sharing piece. So of course you'd move along the game board, and every now and then you'd land on a piece that you already had, so you had a duplicate. So what you do is take that duplicate and share it on Facebook, and that earns you another spin and keep going. So again, you progress. I'll keep progressing if I share it. And the cool thing is when you shared it, anybody who saw it could click and claim that piece, and that would draw them into the program. So again, it's contextual. We're not asking you to do all these things as a standalone thing. It's indexed to the context, in the context of the game, and it helps you progress through it. And I think that's a big difference between game-based and gamification. In game-based, the experience is the game. And so, from a results standpoint, 1.2 million shared game views is kind of a big deal for Cracker Barrel because it got all that noise they wanted to create on social networks. And the one that's interesting to me is right here. 13 minutes on the promotion website, and you can only imagine what you pay for that on television. So, the proof's in the pudding. If you make it fun and you make it an immersive game experience, you can satisfy all of your business objectives by elegantly putting them into a game experience rather than a more crude thing, which I'm going to show you now. So here's another example. This is one I found online when preparing for this, and I thought it was amazing. So here I can win a summer getaway in Vegas. Amazing. Lots of people go to Vegas. And all I got to do is all these things. So, in the old days, actually, when we first built our platform that incentivized activities, sometimes customers would want us to do this, so I know what kind of results these get. What happens is, you sign up, you fill out the form, and then you pick the things of these that you think are least onerous and do it and you split. And you never come back. Why don't you come back? Because this is not fun. Filling out the form sucks. So this isn't, there's no context for this. All these activities have no context. So you're just going to pick the path of least resistance and you're done. So I'm going to show you a way if your thing is really just pushing people towards those activities and not so much on the full engagement immersive, you could do something like this. The first level is here, and what you got to do is pick one of these and see if you find an entry into the draw for, these are all the associated prizes. So let's just play the game. So you have this feeling that you can control your experience, even though there's a whole engine behind it that's really controlling it. But. So I got an entry. So now it's risk and reward. Do I want to save this entry and finish the round and start another one, or do I want to keep going? So in this case, because I've only won a year's supply of cabinet or anything, I'm going to shoot for the $100, call me crazy. So I got my 100. Okay, so now let's risk it and go for 5. In this case, I didn't do well. What happens? It pushes me to the things that the customer wants to do. And because it's progress and because it's contextualized, it's a fun little game, I'm willing to do it. The average person will play this game 33 times the time the promotion's live. It's crazy. I probably wouldn't, but people do these things, so it's a little different. But that's the difference between putting the experience in a game and crudely grafting on game elements to a boring experience. And I think that's the essence of the juxtaposition that I'm trying to highlight today. I want to take a look at a few gamified training programs, and then we're going to take a look at a game-based approach, see what the differences are. The fundamentals are roughly the same. So here's an example of a gamified learning management system. So it's got some game elements, got points, badges, progress meters and such. And those things actually will prompt people to go and participate in the training that you're rolling out. But there's a couple of issues. These things have no context. Now, if the points were redeemable in the company's rewards store, and I could win a tube or a toaster or something, maybe they've got some relevance. Or if they were currency in interactive experience, sort of an intrinsic reward, then they would have some context and be more valuable. But in this context where they don't have a lot of meaning, they'll have an effect, but it'll be short-lived. So the other thing is that they rely on the training experience being rich. And if it isn't, their effect is even further muted. So if you dig into the training experience, it's not the greatest. So there's a lot of PDFs, and actually in this particular platform you can watch a video and have a quiz game too. There's a big challenge here, like nobody learns from reading a document. How many times have you been reading a book at night and you read the whole page and then you think, I have no idea what I just read? I imagine if I asked you to put your hands up, almost every one of you would. And that's because we're able to process a whole bunch of other stuff while we're doing that, and our mind isn't fully engaged. And when we want people to learn, we need them leaning forward. We need it to be an interactive experience. We need there to be feedback. We need there to be motivators in there to keep people engaged. And I don't think that the PDF style learning accomplishes that very well. So the challenge you have is you've got this learning management system that's got game elements that push you to a content experience that isn't great. So I contend that you don't learn very well. And then compounding the problem, there's no reason to come back. And when you're force feeding people content like this, you need them to come back all the time because you got to punch that stuff into them. It's the only way they're going to learn is read it and read it and read it, and nobody's going to do that. So I would contend this isn't the most effective way, but they've used a couple of game techniques to try to make it a little more effective. Here's another example. So in this one, you take the training and there's videos and PDFs as well and quizzes, kind of the same content experience, but the reward. So in this case, when I complete the training, I get access to the game's arcade. I can play games as a reward for having completed the training. So there's a problem with this one, and that is that, this is not all that compelling. And I don't mean that the games, they're probably pretty good, but I can get every one of those for free on my mobile phone. What I take for in training, good will get the videos. Great, doesn't make any sense. So these are what we go around the office call gamification. And they're almost dismissive of the end user. Like you're putting a carrot out there. It's so obvious that the carrot is nothing real. You haven't put any real effort into caring about the end user. It lacks empathy. And I think that's a key element to a really solid game-based approach is empathy. You got to walk a mile in the end user's shoes and understand what that experience looks like. If you're not able to do that, it's probably going to be tricky. Okay, enough ranting about graphic gamification. Okay, I apologize. This is our learning platform, and it's not meant to be a product platform. It's just the only place I could find a really good example of this. And I don't say that sounds bad, but it's true. And when I walk you through it, I think you'll probably agree. So if I could go back, I won't bother. If you go back to that first screen I showed you in learning where they had the badges and the points, this is that exact same thing, only this time it's a game. So this is a version of the learning platform that's built for a bank. So here you've got a tiny little bank in a rural town. You've got customers and points, and you've also got these little boxes here. And they're branches of the bank or sort of departments of the bank. So your goal is to grow this little bank into a gleaming downtown tower. We're halfway there at level 5. And the way you do it is by taking training. By taking training, you earn customers, and customers earn you points while you sleep. So it's got a lot of elements, not the least of which is the game narrative, the story. Narratives are great. Story's awesome because it gets people immersed. They want to see what the next level looks like. They're curious about what the end looks like. These are common tactics that are used in all of the best video games. They're always sort of based on the story. And so in the best mobile and social games are all done this way as well. So the narrative is really important. And then the standard gamification elements, cut points, and so on and so forth. There's also a strategy element. So these boxes here, if you click on one, you would end up on this screen. And these are upgrades that cost you points. So for 5 points, I can add physical signage to advertise various things. And for 5 points, I can add charging station. 10 points, I can add charging stations. These are all things that the banks are actually adding. So as the learner plays this, they're understanding the new products and services the bank's rolling out, what the value is to the bank, what the value is to the customers. But this isn't really where the learning takes place. This is just the fun. Its goal solely is to drive people to the training. But the learning experience itself is a game, and it's educational. So I think the key thing here is nesting all of that messaging into something interactive and fun, as opposed to saying, we'll give you a point if you read that physical signage is good for the bank. So I think that's a key difference. So we go back to this screen. The goal of this screen is to get people coming back every day, because when they buy their upgrades and they tweak their bank, they want to come back and see how many points they've accumulated, and see if they have enough points to buy something new. So but people come back every day and it works really well. So I click the train down button because that's what we want you to do, and that's how I accumulate customers. It takes me to a course list, which then takes me into a course. Now courses are made up of a bunch of steps, as they would be in any learning management system. The difference is the steps can all be games as well. And I think that's where you really start to make this whole experience really fun. And so we'll just dig into a couple of examples, and I'll explain how they differ. This one in particular. Take the PDF training I just showed you, that I think is horrible. Here's an alternative. So you take your PDF content, and what this game does is it nests a bunch of mistakes in it. And your goal is to go and find the mistakes and correct them. When you find a mistake, I've clicked on here and I've got the answers to that. Replace it with. There's no way I can accomplish this without actually understanding this content. Impossible. Well, I mean, I can click 9 million times on every piece, on every letter, but if I'm doing that, that's another problem. But the point is, you really have to learn and understand it, and it's fun. You got 5 lives. Every time you mess up, you lose one, lose all 5 lives. You got to start over. You got points for how well you do. The gamification elements are tacked in, but the key is that we made this a game. And I think that's what you need to strive for. Instead of saying, I'll give you a badge or points when you read this PDF. We need to make that PDF a game. And that's the difference between gamification and game-based learning. Here's another example. So we're staying with the banking thing because I was there before. So banks, like a lot of businesses, are really eager to drive their digital transformation. It's a big term these days. And so what BMO did was they created a library of simulations of their mobile app, and they gave people points when they took it. But the app literally has a blinking light that tells you where to click each time. So how many of you have ever been driving someone home in your car? You're driving along, the person sitting beside you, you don't know how to get them there, so they're telling you how to get there. No problem. Right, left, whatever. Get them home, all good. And then the next time you're going to drive them home, I have no idea how to get there. You ever had that happen? It's because you were just following instructions. You weren't thinking, you turned your brain off. Yeah, right, left, whatever. Off we go. You're having a conversation, not paying attention whatsoever. That's what this does. It's just guiding me. So if I did it 100 times, I might remember. That's about how many times it took me to learn to drive my wife home before we were married. But anyway, I wasn't super good at that. But that's not a great way of learning. And nobody's going to come back and do that again. And you need them to do it 5 million times to learn. So, I call it not so great. Another alternative is to turn it into a game. So in this example, TD's made it a mission. So your goal is to deposit a certain amount or a check into your savings account, and you have a certain amount of time to do it. You get a score, and each time you make a mistake, you lose points. If you make too many mistakes, you got to start over. There's no guide. It's deposit a check. You got to look at the menu and say, where does it say deposit? Tap on it, figure it out. What's neat about this is TD reports that people this is employee facing, and then employees are doing it multiple times to get this thing perfect. It's a great example of one is pushing it at you, and another is turning it into a game so that you willfully want to participate and willing to do it multiple times. Another one is, we have them because we have salespeople, and we're salespeople, and often part of the training is doing these like role play scenarios where 2 people sit, one's the customer, one's the sales guy. And the limitation is that some people are really uncomfortable acting, so it can become like the worst charade of all time. So another example of how to fix that is turn that into a game. So this is a game where a customer comes in, they want something, you got to figure out how to answer them. Well, some answers are 100% right, some answers are 100% wrong, and then there's a bunch that are in the middle, kind of like real life. And the customer reacts based on how good the answer you picked was. If you grab the terrible answer, you're going to lose a life, and if you lose too many, you're going to start over. Again, tacking on the game elements, but making this experience, which is the experience of actually interacting with someone, a game, and making it a little bit more fun. And this way, you can drive repeated interaction, and you can also, when people get it wrong, you can show a feedback loop that kind of tells them a little bit why they got it wrong, so they actually learn why they made a mistake, contextualizing it, really important. So as opposed to saying to someone, if you go meet with John and do a role play, we'll give you X points, we turn it into a game so that it's an immersive experience, and that's kind of the theme of this.
So current customers are having this review again?
Yeah, so this is their frontline staff and their support staff.
Oh, it's employees.
Yeah. So
employees learning all the certain
That's right. So the employees will learn foundational knowledge and stuff like that, then they'll learn about all the products, and then they learn how to suggest the products and recommend them and stuff in a way that doesn't seem egregious, right? Yeah. So you go back to this, and you're back at the course thing, but now I've done a bunch of stuff, and I've got grades. And these will kind of motivate me to play again. My grade of C means that I didn't maximize the number of customers in the overarching narrative game, which prompts me to go back and play again. Of course, which drives the repetition that we need to actually create learning. So the difference between the get points for reading PDFs and changing the whole thing into a game is dramatic. You can also, with this kind of stuff, you can definitely gauge reporting on how well people are doing. So, I mean, I guess the overarching thing that I would say is that there's this gamification has become a real buzzword in the industry, and more in the corporate world, what we're doing is people not believing and saying it's garbage, and they're right. If it's gamification, if it's tacking leaderboards and badges onto otherwise boring experiences, it's not going to cut it. It might have cut it for old guys like me, Gen Xers, because we weren't real gamers growing up, but millennials, forget it. It's not going to fly. So I'll finish off by sort of explaining, reiterating the difference. Gamification, the experience doesn't change. Game elements are sort of crudely tacked on to drive engagement, and it's not contextual. Whereas game-based, the experience is the game. The game elements are contextual, and they're indexed to whatever the objectives you guys are trying to solve with your game-based program. You need to think about what is the outcome you want from this, and then you need to find ways to derive those outcomes from a game experience. And when you achieve that, the results go through the roof. So that's all I got today. Does anybody have any questions?
You were mentioning that badges need context, they need to have value outside of the experience. What, for example, in the TV app, would an employee do with their points that would motivate them to want to have more points?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. So there's the intrinsic value of points allow you to upgrade your bank and go further, so you're leveling up with them. So that's the intrinsic value. But we also have tied it into their employee rewards program called WOW. So you can exchange points for rewards. For rewards, like a loyalty program. A lot of companies have internal ones, so you can tie that to it. But just the game itself, because the points are the driver of progress, we have a lot of programs that don't tie into rewards programs, and they do roughly just as well. It's not so much, the reward doesn't have to be tangible or physical. It just has to be there, and if it's within it, if the reward is an intrinsic reward within a game, it actually works just really well. Yeah.
Wonderful talk. Really
Oh, thank you.
The LMS that you were mentioning, that's corporate, is the biggest problem because they have to do corporate LMSs and generic ones that were never designed for this. What was the one that you had there? Is it one that's proprietary to you?
The one that I showed, or this last one?
Yeah,
the game?
The one that was good.
Oh yeah, that's ours. I apologize for the crude product.
No,
but yeah, it is ours.
I agree with you. It's the only good example I've ever seen. So
well, thank you.
Very good. So do we have to use your LMS, especially in banks, because they have all that privacy and firewall issue?
Yeah, we work with a ton of banks, so it's not a problem to do that. It's, you can try to gamify your existing LMS. The problem is they're, most LMSs are minimum 10 years old.
Yeah.
And they don't have the features and functionality that you need. You can build quizzes and stuff like that as content. But the issue is that, again, it's not contextual. And so, I think there's more and more great companies coming out doing stuff like this. Not as much in the learning space, but in the marketing space, tons of them. Lots of companies doing great work. So I think there, you can outsource it. But I think there's ways to build smaller versions of this internally if you've got folks.
I would find out more about the LMS and launch by.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So, we're very already, so they're not gonna let us just decide which elements
Yeah, of
to
course.
use, right? So we have either, but can you have the course loaded, but then have it actually go into an external, which might be a site like yours, if you
Yep.
have that would be fun. So
Yep.
it's not the corporate or anything, it's the
Yeah,
special
totally.
stuff, says we want to be able to do these kinds of things, but I can't do that.
Yeah, so you can link out.
Do so that that's good point.
Yep. No, that's fine. And there's also sometimes point integrations where we push that back to learning management systems.
Well, there's registration and.
Yeah, single sign-on,
and
yeah.
That single sign-on, all that
Yeah,
stuff.
no problem. The issue with pushing information back is, again, 10-year-old technology, they're not tracking much. Whereas modern stuff, like literally, for example, you'll be able to track the first 3 or 4 times a person plays each module, and then you'll be able to track their average score after time, so you're able to measure learning. And then you can dig down into what questions they get right and wrong, so you can spot actually at an organizational level and individual level. So I think modern technology is going to give you super rich data with old technology.
So first of all, thank you for the great presentation. When you are working with a new client and basically starting with program objectives or learning objectives, could you talk a little bit about the process that you go through to then match that to a game interface or to a type of gameplay that you are confident is actually going to achieve those?
Actually, pure guesswork. Okay. So, we've been at it 20 years. So there's a few things, and you kind of develop a bag of tricks or book of best practices over that time. And so there's certain things that we know just from looking at the data from the programs we run, we know are going to work, and we generally recommend those because they're low risk and high reward. But the conversation always starts with understanding the learning objectives and hopefully talking to a couple subject matter experts, which is not as easy as one might think, but sometimes you get to. And then the next thing you need to understand is what are the obstacles? Like, what are the things that the employees are saying? What are the aversions that they have to learning? A lot of people just don't like learning. A lot of times, you hear the fact like, well, not enough time is allotted, or whatever the reasons are. So based on that kind of feedback, allows you to start to look at, if you understand the obstacles you're trying to overcome, it's much easier to identify tactics that are going to be successful with that. So we really try to get in the nitty-gritty of what the real problems are. And then mapping it out is really, it's like, what's the desired behavior we want to see, and what are the things that we can do to motivate it? And it's literally sitting around the boardroom, kicking around ideas and laughing at the people whose ideas are bad. But often they're mine, so it's fine. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. There's a question. How much does it cost? Like, if you can say,
Oh, sure. Are you talking about marketing side?
marketing side, you do
Marketing side.
my second question is examples with the banks.
Yep.
What with the project community or?
We haven't yet.
Okay.
This is the only time they've ever let me get No, you know what? It's interesting though.
So to do a game about the culture to our mind.
It's a great question. I hated school. I really did. No, I'm not very much. I really didn't like it. I struggled with it. And I have watched my son struggle with it. My daughter loves it, my kid hates it, my son hates it. And I think this approach would work for me, and I think it would work for a lot of kids. And I've thought about, what are the things that we could do? What are the things that we could do to make it better? So, but we've never worked. I don't even know how to tackle that, like who I would call to do that. But it's something that's interesting to me because I think there's a lot of subject matter that could be greatly improved.
You said you had to training and you have the data and how
Yeah.
people use it, so it's very valuable to know like what works and not to use it. Like something very interesting.
Yeah.
So, but I guess it costs a lot.
No, it's not that bad. So it's per learner, it's $48 a year. Yeah, and then of course for your guys, you're willing to do whatever you scale pricing. So it can be very affordable. And by the way, all that stuff you author yourself. It's got all authoring tools, so it actually generates the games for you. You just go write the content. Go. I didn't want to show that because I'm not trying to do an ad here, but it's all authorable. Even the overarching narrative game, authorable. You author everything. It's just a game engine. Yeah, literally you can go in and say, I don't want this to be a bank, I want it to be a lemonade stand. And then you can change all the little boosters and whatever. So, yeah, fully flexible. Yeah.
Hi, first of all, thanks for the talk. Secondly, and if there are any K-12 educators here, please forgive me, this is not my field. But my background is certainly organisational psychology, and it's well known, I'm sure you know, boys and girls learn differently in school. They process information in different ways, they integrate their physical environment with their intellectual learning in different ways and styles. Have you noticed gender differences? Do you see gender difference? How should it be addressed?
It's an awesome question. I'll go back to a few years ago when we were doing the game-based marketing stuff, and first of all, when we were trying to sell this in the early days, people would say, well, I don't want teenage kids in their mom's basement playing our marketing games. Interesting that the statistics show that casual games are played more by women, by far actually. On the training side, we've noticed no gender difference, no discernible gender difference. It's like participation only 48.6% men and the rest of them. So I don't know, but what I actually haven't dug into is whether there's a difference in efficacy between the genders. And it would be, first time I've ever thought of it, it would be interesting, and I think we could actually pull that data, but I don't have the answer. But it would be interesting to know.
If you're looking to investigate it, there are a number of books you can read, but one that even I'm able to comprehend, even though, again, adults in my field, not kids. There's a really good book called Boys Adrift,
Yeah?
which is worth looking at. Just to look at the different learning styles and to index some of the research on that.
Or is it really?
Boys Adrift.
Thank
Yes.
you. I will check that out.
It's written by a physician.
Hopefully then all of the website can listen to it when I like to work. That's my thing. Any other questions? Yeah?
You guys white label?
Yep. And it is necessarily white label because it's all authorizable, right? So you can change everything. Yeah.
And a second question, can you integrate, I guess, more complicated games into the platform?
Yeah, so, yes, you can. We haven't yet, we're, like on our roadmap, we're trying to put out a new learning game every 6 months or so. The challenge for us is that every game has to be self-authorable. So, we have times up. So we want to do that, but there's a limitation on how much we can do. I am out of time. I'm sorry if people have other questions, but hang around out there. Happy to answer anything. Thank you so much for your time.